Hello, good day guys. Today we are going to learn about making connection. I'm your teacher Maricel. So before we start with our lesson, let us first look at the picture carefully and then complete the sentences by showing the connection we made. Wow, this is an amazing picture. Okay, can you finish the sentence? This makes me remember. Alright, that's great, very good. How about the second picture? Oh, this is Jollibee. Upon looking at the picture, it reminds me of... That's nice. Alright, and the last picture, look at them, they're so happy. This makes me think about... Alright, that's great. So last one, this reminds me of when. Look at this little kindergarten student. Okay, does it remind you something? Alright. Okay, so we have here the next one, mano po. This text makes me think of. Alright, wow, you got the correct answer. Do you still remember some of bedtime stories your mom had told you? What is it? What part do you love most? Today, we will read one of the best bedtime stories. It is entitled The Hare and the Tortoise. Look at the picture. Oh. Can you remember something? Alright, that's great. Okay, so now let's read the story. The Tortoise and the Hare. There was once a speedy hare who bragged about how fast he could run. Tired of hearing him boast, slow and steady, the tortoise challenged him to a race. All the animals in the forest gathered to watch. Hare ran down the road for a while and then paused to rest. He looked back at Slow and Steady and cried out, "How do you expect to win this race when you are walking along at your slow pace?" Hare stretched himself out alongside the road and fell asleep thinking, "There is plenty of time to relax." Slow and Steady worked and walked. He never ever stopped until he came to the finish line. The animals who were watching cheered so loudly for Tortoise. They woke up Hare. Hare stretched and yawned and began to run again. But it was too late. Tortoise was over the line. After that, Hare always reminded himself, don't brag about your lightning pace, for Slow and Steady won the race. Alright, so now let us answer these following questions. What does this remind me of in my life? What is this similar to in my life? What does this remind me of in another book I've read? How is this text similar to other things I've read? What does this remind me of in the real world? How is this text similar to things that happened in the real world? Skilled readers and learners are constantly making connections. They recognize the interrelated nature of knowledge and actively note the themes and similarities as they emerge. Students can learn how to make effective connections and how to group these connections into three categories. The first one is text-to-text connections. Relate ideas learned in a text with a student's own experiences or ideas. Text-to-text is the next one. Text-to-text connections are recurring words or ideas within a book. And finally, text-to-world connections are links between idea in a text and other domains of knowledge. Making connections helps students to deepen their learning by appreciating the ways in which knowledge is interrelated and multifaceted. By developing broad networks of associations around individuals' concepts, students increase their ability to retain and retrieve information. Beyond the general benefits of making connections, each individual type of connection has its own unique benefits. we have the text-to-self connection. Help students to engage emotionally with the text, to relate to characters, and to enrich their conception of story details. Text-to-self connections are highly personal connections that a reader makes between a piece of reading material and the reader's own experiences or life. An example of a text-to-self connection might be, this story reminds me of a vacation we took to my grandfather's farm. Text-to-text connection. What is this? It helps the students to identify themes and main ideas, and to notice characteristics of an author's writing style or commonalities of writing in general across authors. Sometimes when reading, readers are reminded of other things that they have read. Other books by the same author, stories from similar genre, or perhaps on the same topic. These types of connections are text-to-text connections. Readers gain insight during reading by thinking about how the information they are reading connect to other familiar texts. This character has the same problem that I read about in the story last year, would be an example of a text-to-text connection. Finally, we have the text-to-world connections. This helps students to activate relevant background knowledge to inform their understanding of the text and to expand their appreciation of the means of interconnected knowledge. Text-to-world connections are the larger connections that a reader brings to a reading situation. We all have ideas about how the world works that goes far beyond our own personal experiences. We learn about things through televisions, movies, magazines, and newspapers. Often, it is the text-to-world connections that teachers are trying to enhance when they teach lessons in science, social studies, and literature. An example of a text-to-world connection would be when a reader say, I saw a program in television that talked about things described in this article. Alright, so let's start with the learning task 1. I know that you have learned something from our discussion today. So here you're going to tell what category of connection each sentence shows. Write your answer in your notebook. So you're going to write here text-to-text, text-to-self, and text-to-world. Alright, so number 1, this part reminds me of how my father became very strict at home. Number 2, I felt like I am Goldilocks when I visited the province with my mom. Number 3, if that happened to me, I would probably be embarrassed in front of the people. It is similar to my favorite movie watched before. Number 4, this story of the woodcutter reminds me of the short story I had read before. Number 5, something similar happened to me when I was a grade 1 student to my classmates, when my classmates did not like me. It is similar to the K-drama I read before. Alright? So you're going to write all the connections, the type of connections. Learning task 2. Look at the picture and read the story carefully and then tell if the connection made are correct or not. Draw smiley face if it is correct and arrow down if not. 2 frogs. A group of frogs were traveling through the woods and 2 of them fell into a deep pit. When the other frogs saw how deep the pit was, they told the 2 frogs that they were as good as dead. The 2 frogs ignored the comments and tried to jump up out of the pit with all their might. The other frogs kept telling them to stop, that they were as good as dead. Finally, one of the frogs took heed to what the other frogs were saying and gave up. He fell down and died. The other frog continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the crowd of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and just die. He jumped even harder and finally made it out. When he got up, the other frog said, "Did you hear us?" The frog explained to them that he was deaf. He thought they were encouraging him the entire time. Wow, this is a very nice story. Okay, so we are going to write the connections. Okay, so you're going to answer smiley face and arrow down. Number 1, I felt like I am the frog when I cannot understand what my classmate is saying. Is it a connection? Number 2, if that happened to me, I will go to the party and enjoy the rest of the night. Smiley face or arrow down. This story reminds me of the Iron Giant story because the giant is very helpful. Number 4, I can relate to this part where misunderstanding took place because one time I thought my mom loved what I was doing, but she was not. Number 5, sometimes failure happened to me when my teacher is trying to stop me, but still I kept on doing what I did. What I have learned. How do you make the connections between information viewed and personal experience? What are the different categories of connections? Explain each. Alright, great job for that. So we will have the learning task 3. All you have to do is to read the sentences carefully, identify the connections made by the speaker, write TT if it is text to text, TS if it is text to self, and TW if it is text to world on a separate sheet of paper or on your notebook, in your notebook. Number 1, this part of the story reminds me when I was young, when I really want to be a princess and lived in a castle. Number 2, this story is similar to the story Little Red Riding Hood. Number 3, this part shows the reality that we must do our best in everything we do to become successful. I watched this in movies before. Number 4, this middle part of the story is different to what I read before. Number 5, I feel so happy. This end part of the story happened to me once. Alright, so letter B, look at the picture carefully and then complete the sentences below the picture. So look at this picture. Does it remind you something? This part reminds me of. Alright, you have to write what have you remembered when you are glancing at the picture. Alright, so that's the end, guys, of our lesson for today. Thank you so much and see you next time.